Story 1. I'm a transplant survivor. Some of these answers are interesting. The odds of dying in a manner that allows your organs to be viable for transplant are 3 in 1,000. Yes, it would be wonderful if everyone registered. It would save your family from having to make that decision. I see nothing wrong with automatic registration with an opt-out option. It should be promoted as the heroic event it truly is. By being a donor, you give a second chance to as many as 8 people and help to heal many more with your tissues. On behalf of the over 100,000 Americans currently on the wait list for a new organ, I implore you to consider registering. Thank you for attending my talk. Story 2. If there is anything salvageable from my body when I die, then the medical industry is welcome to it, and I hope it helps someone else. Story 3. A dear friend's 21-year-old son died in a car accident on his birthday. They donated his organs and everything else because he was brain dead but had little damage from the accident. It was incredibly selfless. Unfortunately, they had to pay to keep him alive long enough to harvest the organs, which I find abhorrent. Story 4. I am a Christian pastor, and on Organ Donation Sunday, I recite this poem by Robert N. Test. Give my sight to the man who has never seen a sunrise, a baby's face, or love in the eyes of a woman. Give my heart to a person whose own heart has caused nothing but endless days of pain. Give my blood to the teenager who was pulled from the wreckage of his car, so that he might live to see his grandchildren play. Give my kidneys to someone who depends on a machine to exist from week to week. Take my bones, every muscle, every fiber, and nerve in my body, and find a way to make a crippled child walk. If you must bury something, let it be my faults, my weaknesses, and all prejudice against my fellow man. Give my sins to the devil. Give my soul to God. If by chance you wish to remember me, do it with a kind deed or word to someone who needs you. If you do all I have asked, I will live forever. Story 5. Great idea. Lots of people never get around to having a donor card, even if they are willing. If it helps sick people live after others have passed away, then all is good. Story 6. It is vital to remember that despite popular science claims, switching from an opt-in to an opt-out registry does not solve organ donation problems and does not increase donation rates at all. The organ donation and transplant system is complex and multifaceted, and solutions require a nuanced approach. Larger issues include the physical transport of organs and the number of professionals trained to perform transplants. Story 7. I am a nurse. When someone dies, we call the organ donation line. This happens every time, regardless of the circumstances. If an 87-year-old dies after a long battle with cancer, we still call. They may not be a candidate, but we still reach out. If someone is a candidate for donation, their family will receive a call from the organ donation coordinators, who will attempt to coordinate the donation process. Interestingly, even when someone opts to be a donor and dies in a way that makes them a candidate, there are still very specific criteria that must be met. We recently had a patient who was a candidate. They were taken to the operating room, extubated, and waited for cardiac death. When that did not occur within the 2-hour window, they were no longer a candidate and were returned to the floor on hospice care until they passed. All of this points to the fact that even if someone wishes to donate, the conditions must align for it to be possible. Having a broader pool of potential donors would greatly help the system and relieve families from having to make decisions in difficult moments. If you wish to be a donor, be sure to make your wishes known now. Story 8. I am surprisingly against it. I strongly believe in body autonomy, and making a choice on someone else's behalf contradicts that. What I do believe in, though, is that everyone should be formally presented the option every decade or so to opt in or out. Currently, you have to go out of your way to opt in. It could be as simple as receiving a piece of mail with a free reply envelope, an informative brochure, and a question asking, "Our records indicate that you have currently opted in or out of organ donation. If you would like to change your selection, please mark the desired choice and mail this in the provided return envelope." Heck, offer a small booklet of healthy lifestyle coupons and discounts yearly for those who opt in. People tend to be more inclined to participate if they receive something in return. Story 9. I resent it. There is a reason I am not an organ donor, and it is not selfish. I have medical diagnoses that are poorly understood and prevent me from donating blood or tissue. Every time I have to ask them to remove it from my identification, they give me a look, and I feel obliged to share information that is not their business. Story 10. Morally, there is something about the term presumed consent that I find unappealing. I understand that we do not have enough organs, but the idea that your internal organs revert to the state upon your death unless you have correctly filled out the necessary paperwork seems reminiscent of the film Brazil. Story 11. I support organ donation. I believe this is a more complex subject than many people acknowledge, but overall, there have been worse ideas than opt-out organ donation. That said, I do wonder how many people who say yes, of course, have considered that it's not just hearts, lungs, and livers. Could also involve limbs, faces, and skin. It includes your uterus and your penis. Transplant surgery is advancing rapidly, and these types of transplants will become increasingly common. This is a positive development. However, I don't know many people in real life who would feel comfortable donating their face to a stranger. Story 12. I am an organ donor. If I have to die, I like the idea that I am saving lives, improving the quality of life for others, and preventing people from suffering the same loss as my family. That said, I don't think automatic registration is a good idea. If I agreed with it, I would be a hypocrite because I complain every time I get a new newspaper and am automatically re-enrolled. I don't think the responsibility should be on me to unsubscribe from something I never subscribed to in the first place. Where I live, the option to be an organ donor is on your driver's license form. It's a box you check or don't check every time you renew, and I think that system works well. Story 13. I disagree with it. There is considerable dishonesty and confusion surrounding organ donations and organ transplants. I do not agree with it on principle and have had my doctor note in my chart that I do not authorize organ donations or organ transplants. Story 14. While I understand the reasoning behind it and support organ donating, it should be an individual's choice, not the default, with the option to opt out. Story 15. I believe everyone should be an organ donor. I am a donor myself. That said, no one should have to consent for the government to take their property. It does not matter if you are deceased. It is still not the government's. Organ donation should require consent and be opt-in only. Story 16. I am happy to be an organ donor, but I prefer it to be opt-in. Opt-out feels like the government is assuming ownership of my body. Story 17. I know that they won't want mine. I offered my hip bone when I had a hip replacement, and it was rejected because I have a paraprotein disorder. So I now feel rejected. I'm joking, but that aside, I think people should have a choice. I think it's outrageous to have it any other way. Nobody has the right to our bodies, dead or alive. Story 18. Unpopular opinion. I don't like it. I am an organ donor, but I made that choice willingly. I don't think a stranger should have the right to your property without express consent, and your organs are the most personal things you have. Story 19. Not requiring consent automatically means it is not a donation. I think it is a terrible idea. I am an organ donor, but I want to be. Story 20. I would feel pretty good about it if I needed an organ, and I would not feel anything about it if I were dead. Story 21. I do not like it. The state does not own my living body or my corpse, and it should not have the right to take my parts. I am very much in favor of organ donations. I carry a card and I am on the register, but that should be my choice, not the government's. I believe it would be better to remove families' right to make a different decision. If I have been clear that I would donate, my family should not be able to override that. Story 22. It should always be an opt-out option. If I'm no longer alive, I have no use for anything. Take what you can to improve or save a life. Story 23. So when does the automatic opt-in start at birth? When can I opt out? Are we going to receive calls from doctors saying they need our organs? Story 24. I want my organs donated to science, but if there's anything that can save another person, use it. I don't need them anymore. Story 25. Organ donation saves many lives, but I can understand why people may hesitate. My brother saved my life through living organ donation. I have 2 children now, and he has 2 children. Life is good. Story 26. My body is the only thing that is truly mine. You do not have the right to cut it up for profit without my full consent. There are also many religions and burial traditions that would never allow such actions. Story 27. I don't like the non-transparent way of operating, where you are automatically signed up for a service you are unaware of, and then it is your responsibility to cancel it if you do not approve. Aside from that, as a corpse, I do not care. I just dislike the principle. The sneaky. Story 28. I can support this, as long as the organs are not sold to the highest bidder or used for unethical purposes. If I am going to die, especially in an untimely manner, let me not die in vain. I once saw the parents of a child who died in a car crash while on vacation, and the child's organs saved 7 lives. They said knowing that his organs saved so many people was the one thing that helped their grief. Story 29. I believe it's something that you should have to opt in for manually, not opt out of. I understand the sentiment of people who didn't know and would have liked to donate. However, I don't think not knowing to opt out is a sufficient reason to allow someone to harvest organs, especially if personal reservations oppose that. It's your body, and it's essentially the only thing you control and make decisions about during your life. I don't think it's right for someone to take that away when you die simply because you didn't complete the necessary paperwork. Story 30. A few years ago, I renewed my license. I checked the option to not donate, but it indicated that I would be donating. I had to call to request a new license. Story 31. As long as we can resolve issues with doctors being a little too eager, I am fine with this. From my experience with my uncle, who is now 75 to 80% back to normal after a very traumatic brain injury, the doctor said, "He's brain dead. Are you ready to pull the plug?" After some pushback, they opened his skull and allowed the swelling to go down. Aside from some memory issues and lingering physical injuries, largely due to the focus on his brain, he is doing well 20 years later. I understand that time is critical when deciding to harvest organs, but there should be clearer guidelines that are less subjective. This is likely more of an issue in places like the United States, where the healthcare system is flawed. I support organ donation, but I have communicated my wishes to my wife and next of kin rather than marking donor on my ID. If 90% of the population opted in, it would likely change the current practices. I'm not saying that all doctors make poor decisions, but my experience has made me more cautious about advertising my willingness to donate on my identification. Story 32. I dislike when people assume that I am a nice, charitable person who would like to see some benefit result from my passing. Story 33. I am mildly worried. I have bone grafts from humans and an autoimmune illness. There may be significant issues in my body that might not appear in tests, and due to hospital conditions and relocating to another country, important information may be lost. I have opted out for these reasons, but I am frequently asked, which makes me anxious that I might miss something. Story 34. Seriously, it would be nice if they informed me before I am signed up for my posthumous charity work. Story 35. If I donate my organs, my family should not have to pay for my healthcare leading to my death. The problem is that organs are part of the medical industry's business model, and while donations may sound altruistic, they are really just another expensive item to sell to the next customer. Story 36. I would say the only issue I ever encounter when reflecting on organ donation is related to where the organs ultimately go. I only know what I see on television. The panel that makes those decisions presents a complex situation. The practice of utilitarianism makes some sense but is also frightening. Story 37. We should opt in. I'm not very enthusiastic about donating my organs since they cannot take organs from a body whose heart has stopped beating. The last few months have taught me that you can't trust anyone. Trump will boldly sell body organs if someone in his circle suggests it. Story 38. I am not in favor of being opted in automatically for anything these days. No one would want my parts. Story 39. It feels a bit wrong to be automatically opted in, as if those are my organs. In a world where ownership is slowly becoming a thing of the past, it feels strange to concede our literal bodies as well. However, I do think I would want to be on a donor list anyway. Even if I die, it's comforting to think a part of me gets to live on. Story 40. I have a sticker on my ID that states not to use any of my organs due to various medical issues. So hopefully, they check that before proceeding. If they don't, most of my family members know not to use me for organ harvesting. Story 41. I would say that it doesn't really matter if you choose to be an organ donor or not, especially if your next of kin does not agree. Once you pass away, that person will be asked about your wishes, and if they say no, then your choice will not be honored, at least in South Carolina and Georgia. Other states may vary. Right or wrong, no hospital wants to confront a family that has just lost someone. First, there should be a strict law stating that if you sign forms to be an organ donor, your decision will be respected regardless of the family's opinion afterward. Story 42. The government has seized control over women's bodies, forcing them to give up their organs, tissues, and health for another person against their consent while they are still alive. At least here, you have the choice to opt out after you are deceased. Story 43. I think if you are going to ban abortion and make women carry babies against their will, then everyone should be required to be an organ donor with no option to opt out. I would even go further and say that you must donate blood once a year. Story 44. I believe opting out should be impossible. Why should a deceased person have more bodily autonomy than living women? Story 45. Salvage what you can. Once I am gone, I am just a body, ready for harvest. There are likely enough people who do not care what happens to their bodies after they pass away but never bothered to register. Story 46. It's how it is in the United Kingdom. I fully respect people's choice regarding decisions about their bodies, so if they want to opt out, go for it. Story 47. We all dislike the opt-out process when it comes to finding data collection settings on our TVs. While I would love for everyone who can to be an organ donor, I do not understand the resistance to it. Once you're gone, you aren't using your organs. I prefer to respect the opinions of those who do not wish to participate and leave it as opt-in. Story 48. Even if you check the box on your license, they still ask your next of kin for permission. Just opt everyone in. Those who feel strongly against it will ensure to opt out, or their family will decline. It's the individuals who do not have a preference that we can include in the transplant system and hopefully help people live longer. Story 49. I would feel worse about being automatically opted out of organ donation and having to opt in if I want to participate. Story 50. Hubs and I are both disabled veterans. When we relocated, we renewed our driver's licenses with the new address. We both filled out paperwork declining donation status, but for some reason, they incorrectly marked donor on his license. Perhaps it was due to his age. I'm not sure. We should have gone back to have it corrected, and we will do so when we renew his license. Mine is fine. The point is that people have valid reasons to decline being a donor. In our cases, there are medical reasons why a recipient would not want anything donated from either of us, even if we were inclined to. I've seen posts online where, when a patient is unlikely to recover, hospitals will vigorously push families to sign donation statements. It is your choice. Don't let yourselves be pressured into it. I applaud those who choose to donate, but we do not want someone developing a disease down the road. Story 51. No thanks. My body is my own, and I don't owe anyone anything. You are also not entitled to anything related to my body, and I don't see why I have to make an extra effort to ensure my body is not exploited when I am deceased. Story 52. I'm already an organ donor, so I guess I'm fine with it, but it feels more invasive to not give your consent. Story 53. I am not against organ donation in principle. I just worry that I might not receive the care needed to bring me back when my organs are very close to being available. Story 54. I don't really care what people do with my body when I'm dead. Turn me into Soylent Green for all I care. Story 55. As long as it is donations for transplants or nonprofit use, any medical corporation using it for profit-based research should not be involved. Story 56. Absolutely not. Any organ they take will be missing from my body in the afterlife. Oh wait, I don't believe that, so I don't mind. Story 57. I don't think it makes sense to default to taking people's organs until they agree to it. It doesn't matter if you don't care. Some people do for various reasons. Even after death, it is not yours to decide. Story 58. It should always be a choice. I am not a fan of being opted in for anything without consent. That being said, gather any information you can from me personally, then scatter my ashes. Story 59. I'm dead? Who cares? If my death can be used to someone's benefit, go for it. Otherwise, I just want to go back into the ground so I can be compost for Earth. No coffin. Just bury me after you get the goods. Story 60. It's a friendly reminder that you are completely owned by the state, that you are a tax slave in life and merely spare parts in death. Story 61. I'm deceased. They can do whatever they want with my organs. It's even better if it saves someone else's life. Story 62. No, I do not agree with the organ donor system as it currently stands, especially after COVID-19. There are many sick individuals who are signed up and may unknowingly pass on damaged organs to others. The current guidelines do not test for the issues we are facing. Story 63. This could be the solution for easily obtaining organs needed by individuals from those who no longer require them. If the process is transparent and opting out is straightforward, this is how it should be. Frequently, life-saving organs are discarded instead of being utilized, even when the potential donor has consented. Story 64. It is quite simple, isn't it? If you don't like it, you can opt out. It's not a difficult process. The change was made because people who are open to the idea or indifferent to organ transplants might not be motivated to participate. No one expects to die, so it's not a high priority for many. As a result, there are numerous willing organ donors whose potential donations go to waste. It is a smart idea. Those who dislike the concept lose nothing but a little time, while those who participate significantly increase their chances of survival. Story 65. It sets a dangerous precedent. The better solution would be to allow organ donations only if the recipient is registered as an organ donor. This would likely increase the number of people who choose to opt in. Story 66. England has an opt-out scheme, but in reality, you will not be able to decide for yourself if you want to donate your organs. Your next of kin will have that authority. They can refuse regardless of your decision about opting in or out. Have the conversation about your organ donation wishes to ensure they are honored if that time comes. Story 67. I would be okay with there being a sundown clause to the law. I would also be fine with it as long as it is not privatized or abused. Story 68. If I am confirmed dead with no chance of resuscitation, then take anything you can. I am dead. I do not care. Story 69. I love the idea of my transplanted corneas influencing the way people perceive the world. I hope they are amazed by the beauty of things as seen through my eyes. Story 70. I didn't know it was automatic. I just renewed my health card last week, and the lady asked if I wanted to be an organ donor. I said, well, my body isn't in great shape, and I'm a smoker. I don't know who would want my parts. She explained that donations are not only for individuals but also for medical research. I agreed to become a donor. My uncle passed away within 6 months from cancer, and although he was a donor, I didn't expect anything to come from that due to his illness. About 2 years after he passed, someone received his corneas, helping them to see again. I thought that was the most amazing thing, to be able to help someone even after you're gone. Knowing that your remains could potentially assist many people in an indirect way is truly significant. Story 71. None of us plan on using our organs if our brain dies, so if the rest of us is healthy and functioning and it can save or improve someone else's life, I believe it should be automatic as long as opting out can be done without providing a reason. Whether it's personal, religious, or anything else, no one should have to disclose why they are opting out. Additionally, opting out should incur no charge or fee. Story 72. I don't know, we already have that in France and very few people actually mind it. I think it's a cultural thing. When something has been a part of the country for so long, the majority doesn't find it weird at all. Story 73. I believe this should be the approach because only those who truly have an issue with it consider it. If they know they do not want it, it would be easy for them to opt out while everyone else defaults, ultimately benefiting more people in the long run. Story 74. If someone has a chronic disease and dies, how can you be sure you are not transmitting the disease to others? Story 75. Once I'm gone, I'm gone. It wouldn't be me inside my body. It would just be a body that once contained me. I am already an organ donor. If I can help others after I'm no longer here, why not? Story 76. I wish that my skin could be made into articles of clothing that transplant recipients would be required by law to wear one day each month. Story 77. There is a significant shortage of viable organs. Organ retrieval requires extensive testing and consideration, and an increased number of people on the donor register improves the situation. Not everyone is a suitable donor. Various factors can disqualify organs, and the time to determine viability can be limited. Therefore, permissions should be clearly established beforehand. I fully support the automatic opt-in for organ donation. I express this as someone who received a liver transplant last year, although I was supportive of the concept long before facing liver failure. I hope that some of my organs will be useful to someone else after I pass away. At that time, I will no longer need them. I understand that families can sometimes oppose organ donation, and certain belief systems may decline these procedures. You have the right to opt out, but I believe that an automatic opt-in is a better approach. Story 78. What use do I have for my organs after I'm dead? It's acceptable as long as they ensure I am actually deceased. The only concern I have is if my organs are given to someone unethical, but the likelihood of them going to a regular person is higher, so I focus on that. Additionally, if anything happens, I would just haunt that individual and make their life difficult. Story 79. How it should be, in my humble opinion. I have a donor pass with me at all times. If I'm done, use my body. I don't care. Story 80. Fine, since I wanted to donate them anyway. I will be gone and won't need them, so I might as well put them to good use. Story 81. I am open to hearing arguments for the other side. My opinion is not set in stone, but currently, I believe that opting out is the best approach. I don't think it is relevant to discuss bodily autonomy and consent, as organ donation only becomes significant after we are no longer here to care about anything. In my opinion, the second best option would be to require individuals to make a decision when obtaining their driver's license. While no one should be forced to make one choice over another, it could be mandatory to indicate a preference before receiving a license, similar to the requirement for completing a first aid course. Organ donation is not directly related to driving, but this approach could encourage a large portion of the population to make a decision, as most people obtain a driver's license. I do not have any other ideas for events that most individuals experience as adults where a desired outcome could be contingent on that experience. Story 82. My mother is with us due to a heart transplant 9 years ago. If anything of mine is usable after I pass away, feel free to take it. Story 83. I think it makes a lot of sense. Personally, I have no problem with my organs being donated. I just never got around to opting in, but now I don't have to. I also believe it encourages people to actively consider whether they want to participate or not. Story 84. I feel sorry for anyone who gets their hopes up for any of my worn-out organs. They are welcome to them when I am finished with them, but I have had my money's worth out of them, and they have not been well maintained. Story 85. Well, considering mine are likely to harm whoever they are administered to quickly, I will need that opt-out form. Hooray for rare blood types. Story 86. No bother at all. Graves and the burial industry are absurd. Every major religion recognizes that your soul isn't there, but they want you to pay for a spot in the ground that your loved one did not care about. It's absurd. Harvest what you can. You are matter made from this earth, and you will return to it. Story 87. I have already chosen to be a donor. Take whatever you need and dispose of the rest. I will no longer be alive at that point, so I do not have any concerns. I believe that making it an opt-out system could significantly benefit many people. Story 88. I opted in when I turned 18. That said, unless you have genuine religious objections, you shouldn't be concerned. can save lives without any effort on your part. Technically, it helps you live on. You won't look any different in the casket, and it doesn't hurt you. I believe no one gets billed for it, so you don't have to worry about how your family or estate will pay for it. There are no downsides, aside from unethical reasons, like prematurely declaring you dead or genuine religious beliefs. Story 89. I engaged in a heated debate on this subject. I support automatic opt-in. I mentioned it to a neighbor, and he became very upset. Why should he be responsible for informing the government not to take his organs? He had no problem donating his organs, but he does not want them to be automatically taken unless he explicitly tells the government not to. This is an overreach by the government, representing a very libertarian perspective. Story 90. I don't care. I will be gone, and if donating an organ could save someone's life, do not hesitate to proceed. Story 91. I think it is a good idea. Many people recognize the benefits and genuinely want to help. However, the choice to participate seems to hold them back. The point of participation is where people tend to reconsider. They often imagine potential outcomes or pose vague, what if questions, such as, what if I actually need a complete body for the afterlife? Or, what if they could revive me in the future, but I need all my organs? These thoughts may sound silly, but they can seem logical to an extent, probably due to influences from popular culture and spirituality. Story 92. For whatever reason, I am okay with taking a major organ here or there. If you want to cut me open and take my liver, fine. But when it comes to veins, cartilage, corneas, and similar parts, I am not personally interested in that. There is a difference between going back into a home to retrieve something valuable after the owner dies and taking that same house and gutting it down to the studs. That's just my perspective, though. I have no issue with another person being okay with whatever choice they make. Story 93. I actively work with organ donors, their families, and the team, and I believe it is a wonderful way to continue one's legacy. Regardless of your feelings, it is essential to communicate them with your family, especially with the person making the decision. You can sign every document the hospital provides, but once you are gone, your family and decision makers have full control. They can change your code status, donation status, and care plans. I witness this every shift. Therefore, speak clearly and often. Story 94. If my deceased body can help a living person lead a better life, I support it. I don't believe that God needs my body to reconstruct me in heaven, if you believe in that. Story 95. I am discussing the British system. I thought I was part of the AskUK community. Good luck to them. The minute they look up my medical notes, they will find that under their own rules, I can only donate pancreatic islet cells. As for other individuals, I cannot comment on their experiences. They are not my own. Regarding the awareness that it needs to be a choice, the opt-out system is not difficult and it was well publicized when the change was implemented. It is also mentioned on driving license forms, renewal forms, and, I believe, passport applications. If it were a completely hidden system or challenging to navigate, I would hold a different opinion, but it is not. If you choose to remove yourself, you may do so. Story 96. That's how it should be. If you opt out, you shouldn't be placed on the waiting list for receiving. Story 97. If you would accept a donated organ for yourself or a loved one, then you should check the box. Since most people would accept a donated organ, it makes sense that the default is checked. In any case, organ donation is rarely determined by an individual's driver's license choice. Story 98. Well, that's how it works here. I think it's a good thing because many people just don't want to take action, and this system increases the number of available organs. If you don't want to be an organ donor, that's still possible. I do not believe in forcing people into one option or the other, but this is not that. Story 99. As a transplant recipient, I can see it from both sides. I had signed on my driver's license that I was an organ donor and never really thought about it other than that. However, in the UK, your family can still decide not to donate your organs, especially if they do not know your wishes. It was definitely not something we, as a family, talked about at all. I assume many others do not think about it until they or someone they know is in need of a transplant. I had to give a talk about my transplant journey shortly after I received it. During this time, I came across a poem that really resonated with me. When I'm gone and no longer around, when you've buried my body deep in the ground, I hope you've listened to what I have said. My organs are really no use when I'm dead. Take them all out, share them around, shout from the rooftops, a donor we've found. My liver, my kidneys, my lungs, and my heart, just a few things to give someone a start. There is a family out there somewhere who made a selfless decision to donate their son's organs, and I, along with others, am alive today because of that. I am forever grateful. Story 100. I wouldn't really care if they are going to take my organs. I feel like they should at least offer to pay for my funeral, however. Story 101. I believe it should be an opt-out system. If you choose to opt out, you would no longer be eligible to be placed on a transplant list, or you would be at the very bottom with everyone else above you. If a person is so selfish, then they should be the last to be selected. Story 102. I am not sure about this, but as a nurse and an organ donor, I find it very comforting to think that by donating my loved one's organs, part of them will continue to live on. I wish more people would become donors. We are all spirits and souls inhabiting these bodies of blood and tissue. We will always go on. So why not donate your organs to help someone else enjoy their life? Story 103. Isn't the actual organ shortage caused by the strict guidelines for organ donation, rather than the number of people willing to donate? Story 104. People dislike change, especially when they perceive a loss of choice. However, this change is simply the opposite of opting in. No one is removing your rights. For those who struggle to understand, taking away your rights would mean you have no choice, such as being forced to be an organ donor against your will. You have a choice, opt out. I would wager that at least 75% of those opposed to opting out in this discussion will not take the time to actually do it. They will likely spend more time complaining about it online than it would take to simply opt out. Story 105. I believe it should be an opt-out system, allowing people to easily opt out if they choose. I strongly suspect that many individuals do not have a preference but simply fail to opt in. If it is not going to be an opt-out system, it should at least be presented in a way that requires everyone to make a decision. My state does it this way. When you obtain or renew your driver's license, you must indicate whether or not you are an organ donor. There is no pressure either way. It is simply a checkbox on the form that must be completed for the form to be processed. Story 106. As long as you are informed and the opt-out process is simple, then there is nothing wrong with it. You have the choice. Story 107. I think it's surprising that organ donation is not more common. Organ donation saves lives, and there are many people who likely do not care what happens to their body after they die but are not signed up to donate simply because it requires an extra step. Story 108. I am fine with it. I think unless you have a religious belief or a medical or genetic issue that would limit your ability to donate your organs, we should all try to help each other, especially if it means aiding someone to live after we are gone. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.